while America is under invasion from within. We're under invasion.
At 4:32 a.m., the Texas freeway was silent, a long silver ribbon under a moonlit sky. Freight trucks drifted past one by one, their lights cutting through the fog. But then, one radar alert changed everything. A convoy was moving fast, too fast, and far too organized to be ordinary traffic. From a Border Patrol command van parked near the state line, agents watched thermal signatures appear on their monitors. 12 vehicles traveling in tight formation, headlights off, engines throttled. The pattern was military, not civilian. Within seconds, ICE operators were called in. They had seen this before, a smuggler convoy, crossing from the south under the cover of commercial traffic. The chase began without warning. Patrol units rolled out from 3 directions, their sirens silent, lights off, forming a moving perimeter. As the lead truck entered Interstate 35, an unmarked interceptor swerved in behind it, closing the gap. But when the flashing lights finally came on, chaos erupted. The convoy scattered, some cutting across medians, others racing down emergency shoulders, dust spraying across the lanes like smoke from a battlefield. In one pickup, the driver panicked and hit the brakes too late. The vehicle flipped twice, glass bursting across the asphalt. Officers rushed in with flashlights and thermal scopes. Inside the crumpled truck, 8 people were found crammed beneath a tarp, their faces pale with exhaustion and fear. Each carried nothing but a small plastic bag, a single change of clothes, a bottle of water, and hope that ended right there on the highway. A mile up the road, agents surrounded a box truck labeled Moving Service. The driver insisted the cargo was empty, but when they opened the rear door, they found only plywood, too thin to be a solid wall. One agent tapped the surface and it echoed hollow. A crowbar strike revealed what they suspected all along. A hidden compartment behind the seat, large enough for 4 adults. The air inside was thin, the walls padded to muffle sound. The men inside had been sealed for hours. As the convoy broke apart, ICE armored vehicles, reinforced Ford F-550s fitted with ballistic glass, moved in to secure the area. Their engines growled across the highway as officers established a perimeter, marking every crashed or abandoned car. Drones hovered overhead, scanning for anyone who had escaped into the brush. By dawn, the freeway looked like the aftermath of a small war. Tire marks, wrecked bumpers, scattered debris, and flashing blue lights stretching into the distance. What began as a quiet night on the Texas border had turned into a full-scale interdiction. One agent summed it up as the sun broke over the horizon. This wasn't just another chase. It was the sign of something bigger, something planned. The road had become a front line, and the invasion had already begun. And that was only the beginning. Like and subscribe to Military Power, because what happened next turned a freeway into a battlefield. The air still hung heavy with the chemical sting of smoke and the metallic scent of spent ammunition. Tactical units swept through the ruined casino floor, their boots crunching over broken glass and bullet casings. The walls were torn apart by automatic fire, slot machines riddled with holes, tables overturned. In the corner of the basement, under collapsed concrete and shattered monitors, lay a fortified office. The badge was found there first, still pinned to a ballistic vest, followed by the man wearing it. From the command center in Austin, analysts zoomed in on thermal footage collected that night. Every truck had moved in sync, maintaining a constant 40-meter spacing, a formation far too disciplined for amateurs. ICE intelligence specialists began cross-referencing VIN numbers and traffic camera hits. One vehicle had been seen near a warehouse complex in El Paso 2 weeks earlier. Another shared a rental address with a logistics company registered to a false identity. The same phone number appeared in 3 rental contracts, all paid through prepaid cards. That trail led to a cluster of shell companies, each one newer than the last, each dissolved within months. Behind the facade of moving firms and delivery services was a cash economy fueled by desperation. Every migrant paid roughly $500 for a promise of safe passage, wired through mobile transfer apps and cryptocurrency wallets that disappeared once the money cleared. For the drivers, the reward was small, a few $1,000s at most. But the risk was enormous. Each undocumented passenger could cost 10 years in federal prison. Many of these drivers were not hardened criminals. They were locals, drawn by easy cash, and convinced it was just a ride. Yet as the investigation widened, it became clear that something more organized was in play. Each convoy ran on a schedule. Vehicles were swapped as specific mile markers, using coded radio calls like clean sky or dry lane to confirm open routes. The language was military. Even their detour points matched GPS coordinates used in previous operations, suggesting shared intelligence between groups across states. To understand the scale, ICE analysts mapped the network across 5 southern states: Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Louisiana, and Florida. The web glowed red on the screen, every route connected by a central hub in Houston. From there, the flow of people and money moved north toward Dallas, then east into Florida, where fake work IDs were printed and distributed through so-called sanctuary employment networks. Each line on the map represented a convoy, each dot a staging post hiding in plain sight. Gas stations, motels, rural barns. By now, local sheriffs and state troopers were brought into the loop. Some had encountered similar convoys but never realized they were part of a greater structure. Others admitted losing pursuit when vehicles split into multiple lanes, forcing officers to choose which one to follow. It was a tactical maneuver designed to exploit hesitation, and it worked. The smugglers understood response time better than most criminals. They knew the gap between 911 dispatch and pursuit was their window to vanish. At one point, agents intercepted an encrypted radio channel used by the drivers. The chatter was short, coded, and disciplined. Updates on checkpoints, police presence, and weather conditions. That single frequency tied at least 8 convoys together under one handler. The voice on the recordings, calm, professional, fluent in both English and Spanish, gave orders like a field commander. Whoever was running this had experience, training, and access to real-time border surveillance. The discovery shifted the investigation from law enforcement to national security. Homeland Security classified the network as a mobile infiltration architecture, a system capable of inserting hundreds of people across the border with near-military precision. The implication was unsettling. Someone had turned illegal migration into a logistics operation. ICE began targeting the logistics hubs. In one case, agents raided a small repair shop near San Antonio that appeared to handle used trucks. Behind the office door was a hidden storage area stacked with forged license plates, false insurance slips, and GPS jammers designed to scramble tracking devices. The workshop's computers held route templates matching the convoy paths recorded days earlier. On one of those drives, the digital timestamps aligned perfectly with the moment the Texas freeway chase began. That connection confirmed it. The convoy was not a random group of smugglers. It was a coordinated operation spanning several states, financed through a decentralized money network, and executed with industrial precision. As night fell again over the southern plains, ICE convoys rolled quietly toward a new set of targets. The agents inside didn't talk much. They knew that every mile they covered was one step deeper into a system that blurred the line between crime and warfare. Because the real invasion wasn't coming from across the border, it was already here, moving silently through America's own highways. Would you recognize a smuggler's car if it passed you on the freeway? Comment your thoughts, because the next part reveals how that convoy turned into open combat on US soil. Most people wouldn't, and that was exactly what made them dangerous. The vehicles looked ordinary, SUVs, pickups, delivery vans. Yet behind every tinted window, behind every layer of cheap insulation and false walls, was a human cargo traded in the shadows. ICE agents learned to see what others missed. The subtle weight on the rear axle, the uneven headlights, the fresh bolts on license brackets. Those details were the difference between traffic and threat. By dawn, the data from the previous day's pursuit had been processed. License plate cameras picked up 3 matching vehicles heading west on Highway 83. Same patterns, same speed. The convoy was rebuilding. Command authorization came within minutes. ICE's Rapid Response Division, supported by Homeland Security tactical units, was ordered to intercept. The codename was simple: Operation Iron Gate. At 6:15 hours, the first armored units rolled out. Heavy-duty Ford F-550, fitted with ballistic glass and reinforced bumpers. Their engines roared across the empty plains as a Black Hawk helicopter from Customs and Border Protection took off overhead. From above, its infrared cameras tracked the convoy. 6 vehicles moving in a tight line, each separated by exactly 40 meters. The coordination was precise, almost military. Inside the lead vehicle, the driver spotted the helicopter and panicked. The formation broke. One SUV veered into the median, another accelerated toward a farm road. The chase was on. ICE pursuit vehicles spread out, their sirens shattering the morning calm. Over the radio, agents called out positions. Unit 3 on pursuit, Unit 5 flank left. Each turn was measured, each movement logged. One pickup swerved to avoid a blockade, clipped another car, and flipped. Dust and debris filled the air. Agents moved fast, securing the crash site before flames spread. 6 migrants were found inside, one with a broken arm, another barely conscious. An agent pulled them out through the shattered rear window, shouting over the noise of leaking fuel. Every second counted. Meanwhile, 2 SUVs tried to break south toward the Rio Grande. Aerial surveillance guided the ground units in. The terrain was rough, lined with brush and small streams. The fugitives drove recklessly, tires shredding against the gravel. When one vehicle attempted to cross a shallow river, it stalled midstream. ICE officers jumped from their trucks and waded in, weapons drawn, but hands steady. They weren't facing soldiers, they were rescuing survivors. Inside the half-submerged vehicle were 7 people, trapped by jammed seatbelts. Officers broke the glass and pulled them free, their uniforms soaked in cold river water. Further down the road, another chase reached a deadly speed. A Cadillac Escalade, one of the original convoy vehicles, tried to ram through a police barricade. The impact tore off its bumper and sent it spinning. When it stopped, ICE agents surrounded it in a maneuver known as the rolling box. 4 armored units forming a square, trapping the target in the center. The driver surrendered immediately. Inside, they found not only migrants, but also encrypted phones, GPS beacons, and a satellite uplink device, evidence of coordination from outside U.S. territory. By the end of the pursuit, 15 suspects had been detained. Among them was a driver identified as a repeat offender, deported twice before, now found guiding a convoy under orders from a handler in Mexico. His phone contained route logs, payment receipts, and one disturbing message. New load, same road, no lights. It was a glimpse into a system that treated human life as cargo and risk as routine. The operation lasted just under 3 hours. On the command screen in Austin, the live feed showed flashing dots converging. The final arrests, the secured perimeter, the extraction of survivors. ICE Director Collins described it later as combat within civilian boundaries, a phrase that captured both the precision and the danger of the mission. But even as the agents regrouped, the mood was heavy. They had won the chase, but the cost was visible. Wrecked vehicles, injuries, lives gambled on false promises. The field medics report listed dehydration, hypoxia, and trauma among the rescued. Most had been told they were only a few hours from safety. Instead, they woke up surrounded by armored trucks on American soil. On the bridge overlooking the Rio Grande, an ICE officer stood watching the current carry fragments of broken glass downstream. It was a quiet moment after the chaos. The helicopter circled once more, scanning for movement, then banked east toward its base. The agents below knew their mission wasn't over. They had only severed one branch of a larger tree. As the convoy remnants were towed away, the radio crackled with new orders. Secure the evidence. Prepare for interrogation. The intelligence gathered from the phones and GPS units would determine the next target. Somewhere beyond the river, someone was already planning another run. That realization hit hard, because for every convoy stopped, another was waiting to move. If you were the commander on that bridge, would you order the chase or the rescue first? Comment below, because the next part exposes what the captured data revealed, and how the convoy's command network reached far beyond Texas. ICE commanders didn't have to choose. They did both. The operation's success depended on it. Saving lives wasn't just a duty. It was also strategy. Every survivor pulled from a wreck. Every seized phone or GPS tracker became a data point in a war that was increasingly fought through information, not bullets. Within hours of the chase, analysts at the Homeland Security Fusion Center began decrypting the phones recovered from the convoy. The devices told a bigger story, not one of chaos, but of command. Each vehicle had received the same route updates from a central number pinging cell towers near Laredo. Embedded in the messages were coordinates, timing codes, and payment confirmations. This wasn't random smuggling, it was organized movement, and it didn't stop at the Texas border. The network ran like a corporation. Dispatchers handled logistics from safe houses disguised as auto shops, tire depots, or motels. The vehicles were registered to shell companies that paid insurance premiums through online crypto wallets. Those wallets were linked to offshore exchanges in Panama and Belize, both outside immediate U.S. jurisdiction. Every transfer was small, almost invisible, but when mapped together, it formed a financial bloodstream stretching across 5 countries. At the center sat a figure known only as El Comandante. He never appeared in chats, never used the same phone twice. What analysts did find was his digital footprint, command signals sent through anonymous relays on dark web servers. His network operated like a paramilitary structure. Handlers, scouts, drivers, and foot guides. Each cell knew only its task and its timing. That's why the convoy moved so smoothly. When one cell was cut off, another simply replaced it. In a secure conference room in Washington, the findings were laid out in cold detail. Satellite imagery from that same morning showed 3 other convoys forming along separate highways, all using identical spacing and timing. The realization hit fast. Texas wasn't the center. It was one branch of a continental system, moving people and goods northward. Homeland Security labeled it Tier 1 Smuggling Infrastructure. Field agents began targeting its logistics nodes. In Houston, they raided a warehouse posing as a cargo transfer site. Inside, they found license plates from multiple states, hundreds of fake IDs, and a wall map covered in pushpins connecting Mexico, Texas, and Georgia. In Phoenix, investigators seized laptops from a trucking company that never moved freight, only people. The hard drives revealed route templates, refueling logs, and encrypted rosters listing over 2,000 entries. Each line represented a life trafficked across the border. Meanwhile, forensic teams examined the convoy's wrecked vehicles. Beneath the dashboards were devices that didn't belong, miniature signal boosters tied to external antennas. Someone had upgraded these cars for coordination. The chips were traced to a supplier in Mexico City that also exported parts to private security firms. The lines between crime, commerce, and covert logistics had blurred into one. Publicly, officials called it a developing case. Privately, they knew it was the beginning of a larger crackdown. ICE, FBI and DHS created a joint task force, Operation Twin Shield, to hunt the command network behind these convoys. Their goal was not just arrests, but dismantling the infrastructure, the money routes, encrypted comms, and domestic collaborators who made the system function. But the deeper investigators dug, the more uncomfortable questions surfaced. Some of the vehicles in the convoy carried valid, state-issued registrations from other regions. Others used ID cards from states that had adopted lenient sanctuary licensing policies. It meant the network wasn't just exploiting weaknesses at the border, it was manipulating gaps within the American system itself. Still, there were victories. In one high-profile raid outside San Antonio, ICE and FBI agents stormed a suburban warehouse at dawn. The operation lasted under 8 minutes. When the smoke cleared, they seized 21 suspects, 2 servers, and over $500,000 in cash stacked in detergent boxes. On one of the computers, analysts found live feed maps from drone cameras positioned near the border, proof that the smugglers had their own surveillance network. They were watching the watchers. The data recovered from those servers reshaped federal understanding of the border threat. It wasn't only about migration anymore. It was about hybrid warfare, organized, data-driven infiltration using civilian disguise and digital coordination. America's highways had become corridors of conflict where law enforcement operated under combat conditions. Weeks later, when the task force briefed Congress, the report used a single phrase to summarize the entire crisis: civilian roots, military logic. That was how the enemy worked, hiding strategy behind the illusion of normal life. Across the country, discussions began about new surveillance laws, electronic checkpoints, and expanded ICE authority. Critics called it overreach, supporters called it survival. But on the ground, agents didn't debate policy. They executed missions. Every shift felt like deployment, every patrol like reconnaissance. But it came at a cost. The highway was littered with spent casings, shattered glass, and burning wreckage. The imagery played across national broadcasts within hours, igniting public concern and political alarm. And just as the network adapted, so did ICE. Drones now patrolled night skies. Armored units guarded choke points, and real-time data-linked field teams to satellites. The system that once moved unseen was now under a relentless spotlight. Yet one encrypted message recovered from the final raid kept analysts awake for nights. Phase 2, ready. Next route, under new flag. No one knew exactly what it meant, but everyone understood what it implied. The network wasn't destroyed. It was evolving. Every city thinks it's safe, until the convoy shows up. Would your state be ready? Comment your answer, because the next part reveals how the aftermath of Operation Twin Shield reshaped America's border strategy and the silent war that followed. In the weeks after Operation Twin Shield, America began asking itself that very question. From border towns in Texas to city halls in Chicago, the answers came slow and uneasy. The raids had ended, the convoy network shattered, but the threat had not disappeared. It had only gone silent, retreating beneath the noise of daily life. At sunrise, the same freeways once choked with smugglers' vehicles now echoed with the rumble of ICE patrol convoys heading back to base. The air smelled of burned rubber and dust. Evidence crates lined the motor pool. Smashed phones, twisted license plates, fragments of GPS trackers. What had started as a midnight pursuit now stood recorded as a landmark operation. Over 200 arrests, 20 vehicles seized, and hundreds of lives saved from the grip of organized crime. Yet victory didn't feel like triumph. Inside ICE headquarters, agents worked under the soft hum of fluorescent lights, logging reports that described exhaustion rather than celebration. They knew the system they faced was not an enemy that surrendered. It was an organism, one that adapted, shifted routes, changed tactics. Today it used trucks and apps. Tomorrow it might use planes and cargo ships. Still, something fundamental had changed. For the first time in years, the agencies that often worked apart, ICE, FBI, Border Patrol, and local sheriffs, were united under one strategy. Intelligence sharing moved faster, operations were synchronized, and armored units that once guarded only checkpoints were now on call across the southern corridor. The chaos of the convoy crisis had forced cooperation through necessity, and that unity became America's quiet strength. The public reaction was mixed. Some saw the footage of armored ICE trucks as proof that the government had finally taken control of the border. Others worried about militarization inside the homeland. But for the men and women who had been there, the ones who chased, rescued, and carried the wounded from the river, the mission had never been political. It was about restoring order where chaos had become routine. At one press briefing, officials presented the final seizure chart. 130 undocumented migrants rescued, 27 traffickers detained, and over 500 digital devices confiscated. The value wasn't in numbers. It was in what they represented. Hundreds of future victims spared, and a national system learning to defend itself again. One senior analyst described it simply: count it not in dollars, but in lives. By the time autumn settled over the southern plains, new policies were already in motion. Mobile radar units watched highways that once seemed ordinary. Drone patrols now followed commercial traffic lanes by night, feeding live data to regional command centers. For the first time, ICE vehicles rolled not just as police, but as guardians of mobility, symbols of a nation reinforcing its own arteries. And yet, amid this renewed vigilance, a familiar tension remained. The same encrypted network that once guided the convoys began flickering back. Online analysts noticed new coordinates, slightly altered routes, and digital fingerprints that looked eerily similar to the old structure. The war was not over. It had merely shifted fronts. At dusk, in a small outpost near Laredo, an ICE officer folded a flag after his shift. The freeway beyond stretched empty and quiet, the last rays of light glinting off distant guardrails. He had seen chaos up close and knew that peace was never permanent. Each mile of road was a line to be defended. Each night, another test of endurance. For those who stood on that line, victory was measured not in battles won, but in the silence that followed. The silence of a highway finally safe again. This wasn't just about migration, or crime, or politics. It was about the principle that defines a nation: control of its borders and the courage to defend them. America had faced an invisible invasion and answered it with unity, discipline, and resilience. Comment "border" if you stand with those who protect the line. Subscribe, because the next chapter starts where this one ends.